Okay.
So, yeah. So you have two offices, you're saying?
So yeah, two offices, two teams, about 10 people here in Montreal, and about 20 people in Paris.
Yeah, it's quite a team, isn't it?
Yeah, it's yeah, significant, sizable team.
Yeah.
It's because
And
we have
that's changed a lot over the last sort of 6 months.
Sorry?
That's a big change from 6 months ago.
It's just that we integrated a team of people that work in collective intelligence based in Paris, and there were 20 people, so that makes a huge difference. And they actually work in open innovation and collective intelligence. On our side here in Montreal, we're more focused on designing and developing the software.
Mm.
And most of the developers are actually based in Montreal, there's only 2 developers that are based in Paris. And yeah, so that's pretty much how we are structured.
That's a good size mug.
Yeah, necessary.
And
yeah, nice. God, it's really exciting to see that. Yeah, you're managing to really make traction with the project and kind of get it off the ground, and yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, it actually all started with Imagination for People, the platform.
Yeah.
We started about 3 years ago, really focused on social innovation and societal innovation, and we had a focus on actual projects, social innovation projects, social entrepreneurship projects all over the world that could be documented on the platform. It's actually a wiki platform, and this is how we started really. And gradually we went from working around projects to working around ideas. And it's in the context of this migration from projects to ideas that we started Assembl and our collective intelligence activity. And we had in our team, and we still have actually, a strong expertise in managing groups of people online. Doing community management in order to produce new pieces of knowledge online. And this is actually one of the very first persons that joined Imagination for People that had that expertise. We gradually built on this expertise to start Assembl. And we won a bid from the European Commission, which helped us accelerate the development of Assembl. In this contract and partnership that we have with the European Commission, we have really a consortium of partners. We're the lead partner, but we have a consortium of partners, including the Open University in the UK, that you might have heard of.
Open University, did you say?
Open University, yes.
Yeah. Of course.
And the University of Zurich, MIT, and 3 or 4 other partners that are more community partners. They manage large communities. So we have 2 types of partners: technology partners and community partners. And anyways, this is how we started, and now we are at a point where we can use and test large-scale Assembl as a collective intelligence platform. And we came across your initiative, and it sounded like it's a perfect use case for Assembl. So yeah.
Can you okay, so I'm already like so wanting to respond to things and start tangents of conversation, but I want to try and resist that urge initially and do something that I find works really well so far in my experience is like just I was kind of writing notes. Do you see this group chat thing in the side here? I've just kind of written a couple of words to myself in there, but like yeah. I wonder if it's worth just like us kind of just checking in and just sort of saying how we're feeling and also like how much time we have and yeah, it's just nice to kind of create just a moment to just kind of like recognize your state of mind and how you're feeling and what kind of like headspace you're in. Are you feeling like kind of hurried or rushed or sort of like peaceful and you've got all the time in the world? Are you distracted by something else happening or whatever? But yeah, also yeah, just time we've got. Like I have no idea how much time you guys have or Alex. And then finally, yeah, sort of hopes for things that we talk about. If there's like particular things you would like to chat about, you'd be interested in. I hear myself. And maybe like fears as well, like if there's things you want to avoid talking about, or like the opposite of a hope, I guess. So, like, for example, for me would be forgetting to decide action points or something. Maybe like action points is really cool to like move forward if there is one. And yeah, just sort of. I don't have sort of like really specific needs actually personally, but Alex, is your microphone muted? This feels quite. I don't know. Are you getting an echo?
I'm getting a.
Yeah, I'm getting a terrible echo.
We are on that. That might be my computer. It's done that in the past.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me mute my mic and see if it keeps going.
Yeah, that sounds good now. Yeah, okay, so now only my microphone is recording, yeah? Only my microphone's listening. Yeah, now oh no, that's good. Okay, that sounds good again. And then Alex, if you let your microphone listen. Yeah? Alex?
You should be able to hear me now.
Cool, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds perfect. So if everyone...
It's my computer, so I'll keep my mic muted until we want to speak, and then hopefully that'll solve the problem.
Okay. Alright, cool. Yeah, what do you guys think of kind of starting like that? With this sort of like checking in and talking about time and stuff and what we want to chat about? Sort of building an agenda together now?
Sure thing.
Yeah, it sounds good for us. Perfect. As per how much time do we have? We're pretty flexible. I mean, we may have an hour or so, or maybe less. It's less relevant. But yeah, we scheduled about an hour.
Cool.
In terms of kind of building an agenda, if you could tell us a little bit about what you do, that would be great, maybe to start off, and then we can go from there.
Cool. Sweet. Yeah, you happy? Should we hand over to Alex, or you want to say more? I want a mug now. I want a cup of tea now. Alex, go for it.
Oh, I'm generally doing quite good. I've been a bit busier than I'd like to be recently, but things are going well. The relevant projects for this that I've been working on, aside from going to democratic school, are a couple of bits of peer-to-peer liquid democracy software with various other extensions, though none of it's quite ready for testing yet. Not public testing, anyway.
Sorry, I just have a question. You said liquid democracy software?
Yes. Are you familiar with liquid democracy?
Not at all. If you could explain that, that would be great.
In a nutshell, what liquid democracy is having multiple representatives per person for different topics, and then potentially extending that to have subtopics, and representatives can have sub-representatives recursively. In fact, I'll just post you a link to one of my blog posts which would hopefully explain it, or perhaps something else which will go into a bit more detail.
Yeah, I definitely highly recommend learning about liquid democracy if it's something you're not familiar with, definitely. But also sociocracy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with consent-based decision making, as opposed to consensus, consent-based, where proposals go round endlessly in a circle. Well, not endlessly, but until everybody at least is okay with the proposal going forward, which is used in communities like Findhorn and quite a few different places, but it just means that no action is taken if there's people who are actually really against it, and it encourages proposals to be improved and improved.
Is it the same dynamic as rough consensus? Because we use rough consensus dynamics in debates, meaning that there are different cycles of discussions that keep going on until there's no veto.
Until there's no what?
There is no veto. There is no vote against such or such statement.
Yeah.
It's actually based on the fact that it's very difficult in online debates to reach a perfect consensus, or even to reach a majority consensus. It's actually way more efficient to wait until nobody opposes the step or the stage of the discussion.
Sure.
So is that kind of the same thing that you were speaking about, or is your definition a little bit different?
Yours, Alex?
That's not too similar to liquid democracy. It sounds more similar to what you're saying about consent democracy, though.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's two main things. Consensus, where and actually, like, to fast forward, I think there's actually a sweet spot in between that hasn't been explored that much, and that's what I'm most excited about, which is essentially consent-based decision making, where the majority rule, and potentially there might be one or two people who are quite strongly against it. But I think certainly that there should be a great deal of concern built into the communication and proposals development sort of process. If there's even a tiny minority of people who really are strongly against something, I think that should be really magnified and a spotlight kind of shone on that. And if there's any possibility to kind of improve proposals, I think it's really important that that happens. But I do have this issue with consent-based decision-making, or sociocracy, or what it sounds like rough consensus might be similar to. And my problem is that there could be a proposal that comes forward that could be of enormous benefit to 99% of people in a group, and just one person is quite against it. It just doesn't work that well for them. And I had an amazing debate with Satish Kumar about that. Satish Kumar is an amazing peace activist who's done lots of interesting projects, from setting up Schumacher College for Sustainable Education, an alternative school, and Resurgence magazine. So he's a bit of an icon in kind of sustainability and mindfulness and peace and areas like that. And I'm not sure we necessarily agreed on this, but he just kind of reminded me, I think, of the importance I think there is in majority rule, not just being oblivious to minorities in a group who kind of are against a proposal. I think it's very easy to just just go, well, most people are in favour of it, so let's do it. Most people will be happier. And actually, I think you can go a lot deeper than that, and it is really important to look at how much you're causing a problem for that minority. But at the same time, I do think part of a functioning democracy does need a degree of selfishness, in the sense that there's no point voting on something if you're not representing your own need. That vote should represent what you want, I think. Otherwise, there's no point. If I vote in a democratic meeting on behalf of everybody, then there's no true representation of any individuals. So I think there needs to be this sweet spot somewhere in the middle where we really do everything we possibly can to make the best possible ideas, even if it sometimes takes a really long time. But yeah, if a tiny minority of people, you know, like, are ill-affected by it, I think it still might be sometimes worth it if it's a massive help to a lot of people. But yeah, these sort of questions are huge to change the future.
No, I totally agree. I think it would be useful for the benefit of the discussion that we have. It would be useful to define at which stage we are looking for consent and what kind of vote we're talking about. Because in our case, it's very tied to the methodology that we have developed. So we use rough consensus at a very specific stage, not for voting pro or against an idea, or against an option. We use rough consensus for validating the summaries of the debate, which is very different. So it might be useful for you to I can say in a few words the methodology, explain in a few words how Assembl works in terms of methodology, and you might be able to understand better where we integrate the consensus search and the voting action and so on and so forth.
Definitely, yeah. Tell me if this is awkward for you, but I just wonder if it's possible for you to explain it, because obviously I haven't actually used Assembl yet. I don't know if there's some people beta testing it at the moment, but yeah, I haven't sort of touched it. I've just seen a couple of images. I would love to have as vivid as possible from you a user journey kind of story. If you give me an example of a random example of how you would love Assembl to be used, and yeah, like a detailed user journey would just bring it to life for me and really help me understand why you're making it and how it might be relevant also to me or Change the Future.
Absolutely. The way we design the software and the methodology is it's based on a very specific role in a debate that we call the role of harvesting. The role of harvesting is actually taken care of by a harvester, who is actually a person or a few people, or it can be as many people as we want, but it's usually easier at the beginning to have a limited number of people. Those people identify in the debate, in the conversations, the key elements, the key ideas, the sort of unique nodes of knowledge that are exchanged in the debate, and they extract those segments, those ideas, and they select them, they extract them, and based on these items, they build essentially a tree map or a mind map. In another portion of the screen, actually, another panel that opens and is structured like a mind map. Each idea becomes a node, and the tree gets built gradually over and over, depending on the conversations. So we get from a completely unstructured discussion to a very structured debate where it is possible to very rapidly understand where we are in the debate, what are the different branches, what are the types of relationships between ideas, if something is a cause or something is a consequence, and so on and so forth. So we essentially build what we call argumentative maps. And that's the first part of Assembl as a process. The second part of Assembl is on a weekly basis or on a periodical basis, depending on the intensity of the debate. The harvester summarizes the state of the debate based on how the tree map that we call actually the table of ideas, how the table of ideas has actually evolved over the last period. And this synthesis, this summary, is sent to all the participants of the debate for validation. And this is where we look for rough consensus. So we don't use rough consensus for validating the ideas. We use rough consensus to validate the summary. It's how representative is it of the discussions that have taken place. So in a way, we validate the form, not necessarily the content, should I say? How the summary is fully representative of the nature of the debate that took place. And of course, it starts iterating. And we do think that collective intelligence is essentially built on iterations. Because we want to essentially avoid the type of behaviors that we can see on regular social media, in which people do not interact with each other. They simply they push their opinion, or maybe best case scenario, they comment a statement, and that's it. And there's no more interaction, really. This is where you need to build the cycle mechanism so that multiple iterations lead to the fact that people, in the synthesis, in the summary that takes place every week, people are inclined to express their viewpoint not only on their own vision of the issue, but really they're inclined to express their viewpoint on what the others think and what the others say. But this is where real collective intelligence takes place.
Oh, we can't hear you there. I think your mic is muted.
Yeah, just too involved in listening. Sweet, thanks for that. Yeah, real quickly, I'm curious whether you are aware of some projects. Are you aware of your priorities in Iceland?
In Iceland, no.
I really very strongly recommend, if there's one project you look at after this meeting, it's your priorities, which is probably of all the projects that I've researched and spoken to, like you guys, they seem to be having the most real-world traction right now, crowdsourcing a degree of collective intelligence, at least proposals from the capital of Iceland, Reykjavik. And they've crowdsourced 5,000 proposals from people living in this city on how to improve the city. And the government there, or the mayor, has officially taken on at least 500 of these already so far. So this web platform is really facilitating real-world democracy right now, and I want to understand their process better, because I think democracy only really excites me when it's done very well. And actually, I think this is a kind of pretty fundamental ideology of mine, I guess, at the moment, is that I feel like for decades, human beings have been mastering the incredible art form of facilitating environments offline, like in face-to-face environments, bringing together Israelis and Palestinians together, or people who would just, never normally talk to each other, potentially. Really diverse groups of people, and an incredible facilitator, confident, compassionate, empathic, insightful, creative, engaging. If they've got a huge amount of resources and skills as a facilitator or a team of facilitators, they can bring out unimaginably beautiful things out of that session, whether it's 2 hours long or 5 weeks long. They can bring things out of each person in that group they didn't even realize they had, that they can bring to the table. However, there's also people who can facilitate an event really, really shitly. They can have exactly the same space, the same amount of time, all the same people turn up, same projector, chairs, everything, literally just the facilitator is the only difference. And everyone could just get in a fight, get bored, pissed off, leave. It could be worse than when they arrived. So I'm really barely interested in anything apart from the nuts and bolts of the intricacies of that process, facilitating how people communicate. Like, for me, it's all about the geeky stuff. What kind of communication are we trying to encourage, and how are we actually equipping people to communicate in a productive way that is beneficial to what we're trying to do, which for me should be about being really open and accessible for anyone, like elderly people, children, people who are maybe not very technically minded, maybe people who are not necessarily very skilled at communicating, or maybe wouldn't consider themselves very open-minded, and beginning at that point on a spectrum, if you like, I guess. And here, what we're trying to do is encourage people to recognize that they don't have anything actionable yet, and they maybe just need to, maybe they would normally complain about something. Maybe normally they would blame someone. They might say Muslims are shit, or these people are causing this problem, or bloody young people, or like, do you know what I mean? But instead, trying to encourage people through good facilitation to just share undisputable personal stories, things that you can't disagree with because it's about your feelings. And in my mind, this is inspired mainly by non-violent communication, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I guess it's difficult to summarize, but essentially it's a way of talking to other people that is much less likely to kind of get people's backs up, and much more likely to kind of get you to a productive place, by which I mean sort of really solving problems, social problems, and working together really well and understanding each other. So yeah, blaming less, assuming less, and sharing more, often from a place of real good personal insight. So yeah, I'm really interested in that. Really, the person who's most sort of skilled in that, probably, or most experienced in the Change the Future team, is Charlie Shred, who kind of co-founded Change the Future with me years ago, and then Alex became very involved as well, like a couple of years ago. And now there's a small handful of us who are really part of the core team, as we call it, in the project. Yeah, tell me if I'm sort of going off on a tangent here. I realise I'm kind of giving you a bit of an overview of Change the Future as well, which you asked for earlier. So tell me if this feels like it's kind of going off topic a bit. But I just wanted to share this idea of this spectrum, where here people who maybe aren't very experienced with kind of being part of a functional cooperative community, whether that's in a city or a school or an organisation or the whole country, in this side of the spectrum, it's fine. You're invited to just say, I feel really at risk when I'm on a bicycle cycling through my city. You know, that's a feeling. It's undisputable. You can't say that's wrong because it's my emotional feeling. But I'm not assuming that I have an idea that is the answer yet. So that's really good then, because that, I think, allows everybody to be part of the conversation. It doesn't say anyone's right or wrong yet, but ultimately you gradually focus it and focus it more and more until at this end of the spectrum you eventually reach actionable tasks to move forward, which represent everybody's interests as much as possible. And somewhere along the way you're going to have democratic processes where proposals, which are increasingly more and more detailed, are put forward and then improved. And unlike an e-petition where one author gets to set it in stone, it can actually be improved and improved and improved, kind of like a Wikipedia article. And I think it's absolutely critical how this is laid out. You know, the interface of this is totally make or break. I think that's part of the facilitation that is actually what makes this interesting. So yeah, we can look at a little bit of sharing ideas for like interface and stuff, laying out all this kind of potentially overwhelming, complex discussion that can involve thousands of people. Like how do you kind of make that something beautiful and really accessible that you instantly get what you need straight away, and then if you want to dig deeper, you can get again only what you need and nothing more. And then if you want to dig deeper still, you can choose which direction you explore. Yeah.
Luke, I just have a question about, because you emphasized the importance of nonviolent communication and the role of facilitators that play, a very significant role in making things as smooth and respectable as possible. Does it mean that, do you have in mind when you allude to those issues, do you have in mind physical debates or physical gatherings of people, or do you also allude to online conversations in which facilitation is of a different nature? It takes a different form, and it's also constrained by the tools and everything. So just maybe could you clarify that?
I can clarify my personal perspective on it, but I want to add a disclaimer that I cannot speak on behalf of Change the Future, and for me it's incredibly important that that is clear to everybody all the time. Obviously I'm a big influence on Change the Future, hopefully slightly less so than I was 6 months ago when there was less of us involved in stuff. But I guess I feel like we live in a society right now where people are to some degree accepting absolutely abhorrent standards in democracy, in democratic processes. Like Alex and I went to a democratic school where children as young as 11 have exactly as much power, decision-making power, as the staff who set up the school. So if a new teacher is going to be employed, they get interviewed by the interview committee, which is mostly students, and then the chair of the meeting, which is always a student, will say, so this possible new science teacher, James, do we want to vote them in? And there'll be a discussion had about James, and then ultimately everyone votes on whether this new teacher is employed in the school or not. And so because the school is mostly students, the students mostly run the school. And I think this is just a fundamental human right, really. And I feel like we're so far away from this. In our democracy, certainly in England, we don't have an agenda on the wall like we did in my school, where anybody can put proposals on there anytime throughout the whole week. there's no way for me to do that really. I can email my MP or I can write an e-petition. Those processes are yesterday. They're the day before yesterday, in my mind. I think we need a real democratic process. But coming back to your point, I think it's really important to recognise that the internet is incredible at doing some things. You know, like I think the internet, I find, is most useful for research and organising things, also for selling stuff. But I'm more interested in the kind of more social aspect of the internet. And I feel like that's what it's useful for. You know, I try not to socialise on the internet. You know, like if I can see your face and hear your voice, that feels a lot more like, you know, it comes closer to a face-to-face interaction. But I think there's a lot of things the internet certainly cannot do, or not to the same extent as being face-to-face. You know, like if you have you know, some disaffected teenagers from some borough in London who have not been out in nature very much. I'm using them as a random example just because I'm trying to talk about stuff that I know about, like groups of people that I've worked with. Then, you know, the best way to engage them in nature and kind of help them to understand what's valuable to us about our forests and our woods and the animals that live in it, and the bees that collect pollen and are part of a essential biosphere. You know, the best way to do that is, I don't think looking at text on a screen or pressing really any buttons on a computer. I think, sure, you can do quite a lot of stuff with some really well-designed educational resources like Khan Academy, or Duolingo is amazing for learning different languages, but I think a lot of education and a lot of social interaction and social education, I think, is much, much better done when you can touch it and you can smell it and you can taste it, you know, you can feel it. Like I can't hug you through the internet. There's nothing that's that intimate or kind of connected through the internet, really, I don't think. Although a documentary can be very powerful, I think we need to recognise that the internet is really amazing at doing some things, and we're barely scratching the surface of that. But I think at the same time we're trying to use it for some things it's actually not very good at as well. So we're pushing it too far with the social side of things, I think, and not far enough with the organisation of information, ideas, democratic processes, things that are really hard to do at large scale. You know, metric stuff, you know, finite stuff, not emotional stuff. So yeah, non-violent communication, I feel like, is about as close as we can get to trying to create really sociable spaces online. These kinds of trying to just encourage certain ways of interacting. You know, like if you look on Yahoo Answers, like you'll get some girl who's like 14 and she's like, "I'm pregnant. What the hell do I do? Help!" And then you'll get people who get awarded points just for replying with anything. And they will just write, "Go and kill yourself," and they get 5 points just because they responded. And that is like, that's when facilitation is so rubbish, it might as well just not be there. You know, because that is facilitation. I think that's the online equivalent of someone clapping when somebody does something bad. You know what I mean? So I'm always comparing it to offline facilitation. But yeah, so I think, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely, Luke. And we share the same philosophy and the same acknowledgement of the difficulties of you know, rendering a respectful, intelligent facilitation on the web. It's extremely poor as far as, you know, from everything that we see. We're usually pretty disappointed by precisely the kinds of facilitation that we that we see in the different tools that we have identified and different practices. Having said that, it's also important for us to make a distinction between collective intelligence and the simple sharing of information. You know, Yahoo Answers is essentially pretty much like any social media, an artifact that allows people to exchange existing information. So I raise a question, and somebody might have the answer. Somebody should have the answer, and we think that it's great. It's great to have those kinds of matchmaking tools, and it exists, and it's sometimes pretty efficient. You know, you might say that the Quora is you know, it's pretty cool. You have interesting stuff and high quality information and so on and so forth. But that's not where we intervene on our side. We really try to build the right conditions for a healthy collective discussion and debate around social and societal issues that do not claim to have existing answers in the head of somebody or in the head of a committee of experts, but that needs to be gradually, slowly co-designed and co-built by a community of interested parties, and any interested party, not only citizens, but also public institutions, but also private businesses, and also universities, and also students, and younger people, and older people, and so on and so forth. So we tried to, pretty much as architects, we tried to build a process, a journey that maximizes the patterns of behaviors that go in the direction of that objective. And this is where we detach ourselves from Facebook groups, from LinkedIn groups, from even from forums online, because they're very rustic. They're very how should I say,
primitive.
Primitive in the way they organize information, in the way they lack any any form of curation, any form of collective loops.
They're almost unfacilitated.
Absolutely, and there's no facilitation actually in most cases. So, and as a matter of fact, when you talked about your priorities in Iceland, or actually in Reykjavik, when you described it, I realized that I had heard about the project. What I heard about around this initiative was that it was built and designed like a call for ideas. And the call for ideas is, in our mind, pretty much the first basic dynamic of crowdsourcing, and it's almost, should I say, if I want to caricature a bit, it's almost the negative side of crowdsourcing, because it's very difficult to prevent a sort of competition spirit between people that want their own ideas to be selected. The process of voting is usually extremely binary. I like it or I don't like it. So it's really a very competitive environment there. and I should check exactly what kind of ideas and what the process specifically was in the case of Reykjavik. But I'm pretty sure of the fact that, and I've seen it in other cities, when you call for projects or when you call for ideas, you get into that sphere of voting and competitive pressure, and we don't know what to do with all the ideas that haven't been selected. They are lost forever. They're lost for humanity. So we try to detach ourselves from this. And my last point would be about voting. In Assembl, what we try to do is we don't necessarily talk about voting. We talk about evaluation, which is very different. Because when you start evaluating ideas or evaluating initiatives, you don't position yourself pro or against. You define qualitatively how you would consider the feasibility or the desirability of the idea, and so on and so forth. So you sort of assess in a more qualitative way along different criteria the ideas that emerge from the group. And we think it's way healthier than having a simple binary voting system that essentially says, I'm against it. And in most cases, you don't even know why people were against it, because they don't explain it. It's interesting to be against something if you propose an alternative, and if you're ready to explain that alternative. And this is these kinds of behaviors that we're trying to promote in Assembl, and that we embed into the system so that people can actually be accompanied. And that's our definition of facilitation, actually. The facilitation is embedded into the system so that, the sort of primitive behaviors of crowdsourcing are almost impossible, or they are, difficult. They are made difficult in Assembl. I hope it's clear. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah. Sure. I think that's beautiful. I think we are a fairly small minority of people really deeply exploring how we can move forward from competitive proposals that all fight each other out to be the most popular. Rather, we want to take what is interesting and useful out of as many as possible of those proposals, and then not necessarily take any single one of them forward in their current form, but learn from all of the ideas and make something better than any single one of them. And so lots of kind of development. There's a real development process. It's not just a call for ideas, as you say. So I think that's really definitely important, I think. And this is why the stuff Assembl and ChangeTheFuture are doing, I think, is so relevant to consent-based decision-making versus consensus. And I think we want to really perfect the best way of kind of bringing people and their ideas forward, and then kind of keep running with them. So I feel like maybe sharing like a kind of user journey of ChangeTheFuture to give you an idea of kind of how it might be used. And I would also love to hear from you, if you'd like to, if you found tomorrow that Assembl, exactly as you imagined it, was already built, annoying as that might be, or I don't know, just if Assembl was online like now, how would you use it right now? Like, I'd love to know how you two, Laura and Frank, like what exactly you would first do on there. Do you have a clear idea in your mind? So with ChangeTheFuture, here's a user journey in like 3 minutes. Maybe I'm on my bicycle I was using an example before about cycling. So every discussion, every proposal, every bit of communication happens inside a group in Change the Future, or it will when it's designed. So one of the groups will be, for example, Brighton, where I live. And so hopefully as many people as possible who live in Brighton and work in Brighton will be part of this group and part of the pool of potential collective intelligence that we can hopefully tap into with really good facilitation in this online space that everybody feels equally invited to, regardless of being left-wing, right-wing, black, white, old, young, whatever their political, religious views or their income, whatever. And I might have been knocked off my bike by a lorry, let's say, or maybe I nearly have an accident, you know, on a roundabout by the seafront, and I see this as a problem. I think it's dangerous. I really care about cycling. I think cycling's good for the city. It's something I advocate, and I'm pissed off that I've been, you know, almost involved in an accident, you know. So I want Change the Future to include a web app for smartphones, so I want to be able to very quickly be able to contribute something. I don't want people to have to spend, you know, 10 minutes just contributing something. You should be able to put a small amount or a big amount. So I want to be able to start the ball rolling by saying either we need to fix this, something needs to change here. Something needs to change. This is dangerous for cyclists. This can't stay the same. So that can be the beginning of the change-making narrative. Or if I want to add to that, maybe something a little bit more focused and actionable, I might say, let's make the cycle lane bigger. That's still not 100% actionable because it's not very specific. It doesn't say how much bigger. Like if it was really actionable, maybe I'd get a Google satellite image and I would draw on a line, like showing exactly where I would want the cycling path to be and what shape and everything. That would be much more actionable. But I think what's really important is that Change the Future can recognize how actionable every contribution you have is. So it helps you to understand as well. And that way you don't think that you're coming up with a really actionable proposal when really you're just complaining about something. I think it's really important for that good communication together for people to recognize where they are on this spectrum of actionability, if you like, because it's really valuable to have stuff here, but it's also really valuable to bring it gradually towards focus and actionability. So at this point, as you are saying, like people should be able to not just throw loads of proposals forward, but improve them together. You know, just like Wikipedia brings more and more and more and more people onto a Wikipedia article, and it doesn't get more messy, it gets less messy, and it doesn't get less accurate, it becomes more accurate and more citations and, you know, more people checking things and going, hang on a sec, this is wrong, you know, it gets better and better. It's just well facilitated. And so I think we can do that with decision making if we have the facilitation really very good. I don't think it needs to be perfect because one of the groups, just like Brighton, will have its own group. Another group can be Change the Future. And I wonder if Assembl will have its own group as well for people to put forward ideas for how to improve Assembl using the Assembl method. But certainly in Change the Future we want to have that, because I think that as long as you create an environment that is good enough, it will reach tipping point where it can self-evolve, it can self-improve. Whereas if it's really crap, it will just exacerbate the crapness. It will bring out the worst in us more than it brings out the best in us, and it will hold us back more than it encourages our best contributions. So yeah, what I hope ultimately is that you end up with lots of people complementing each other's ideas, and then you end up with a really clear proposal which perhaps no one would have had if they hadn't come together. And that's the beauty of it. I think that's what all of us are trying to unlock most. is these ideas that no one necessarily has in their head right now, but when multiple brains and ideas come together, something different and something that didn't exist before gets created, gets co-created. So in terms of layout, I just want to share that, yeah, because it was about 2 years ago, I think, that we changed from having a proposal laid out like this, with the body of the proposal here, and then on one side we had against points, so like multiple points against this proposal, and then on this side we had all the points in favour of this proposal, one by one. And projects like Jolitics, if you ever saw that, there was a website called Jolitics, which was set up by the guy who made Bebo, and he laid it out like this: for and against points. And this argument-based competitive thing didn't really create collective intelligence in a useful way, and we've changed the layout now so that the designs have benefits, so everybody can put what they perceive the benefit of this proposal to be, and then on this side, concerns. So concerns isn't just saying this shouldn't happen, it's just saying this raises a concern for me. So I might say, let's build a cycle lane that's this big instead of this big. And then someone who maybe drives up and down that road every day might say, I'm concerned that you know, this will cause more danger for the vehicles. You're not a car driver, maybe, and maybe you don't realise, especially maybe big lorries like 7.5-ton trucks, you know, need that extra space for turning around the roundabout. And so more people's ideas are coming together, and we keep going back to the drawing board, but not back to square one. And also encouraging at the bottom case studies, so that as much as possible we keep remembering to try and refer to real world examples of things. How do the Dutch do the cycle lanes on roundabouts? Is there anything interesting that we can learn from, like terrible roundabouts? Somebody who didn't even think they cared about any of this conversation has just randomly read some newspaper article about the world's most dangerous roundabouts, claiming loads of cyclists' lives. Let's just bring that into the conversation and say, definitely don't do anything on here, because these have been proven to be rubbish. We need to learn from our mistakes as a global society, not just on a small scale. And then hopefully we've got some good examples to learn from as well. But working a lot in education, I see schools being terrible at learning from each other. You know, some of the more innovative ones are still often reinventing the wheel and think they're doing something original when really they're not. And then schools like where Alex and I went, which I think is a beautiful approach for education, you know, a democratic school environment, a true real democracy where students feel so much sense of belonging for their school that they love it. You know, they really feel ownership over it, and they leave the school still asking questions all the time and questioning the most fundamental of things. And I know that's why I question so much, largely. And it doesn't unsettle me or make me feel lost. It makes me feel empowered and be more aware of the different options that there are in my life and in my society and with other people. But yeah, and then ultimately, when you've got this very good proposal, then what? Then what happens? Let's say these 500 people living in Brighton have, over 2 months, focused this conversation into an incredibly good couple of ideas for improving safety and solving lots of problems around cycling in this area. I think it's really important that, and Alex and I and Charlie as well have been talking a lot about self-organising, facilitating self-organising versus lobbying. So I think there's still some stuff that we're not 100% kind of concrete on here, but I feel like personally that I think it's important for Change the Future not to appear instantly as a threat any more than it needs to existing authorities, whether that's head teachers in schools or the local council in a city or the government or the CEO of McDonald's. You know, like you might make a McDonald's group and the customers might create that group. The CEO might get some really useful ideas about how to improve products and services, which is good for the CEO and good for McDonald's, but at the same time they're not allowed to censor any of the stuff saying, why are you deforesting the Amazon, you know, for your herds of cows, or why you're using this terrible chemical fertilizer. You know, so they get the good bit and the bad bit. Everything's open and transparent. But yeah, so there needs to be a way, I think, at least initially, of Change the Future, at least trying to cooperate with existing minority authorities in all of these different kinds of environments, these shared places that we work and live and play in together, where there's a minority authority at the moment. So we work with them, and hopefully they will, you know, especially in Brighton, I feel like the council here, for example, are really open to exploring a lot of this stuff, and they can see a lot of benefits, hopefully more than the threats of something like Change the Future tearing power away in a irresponsible, unconscious, dangerous way. I hope they can see Change the Future as really trying to learn from the council and practicing what it preaches, you know, not just saying Change the Future competes with your way of governing and we're going to win because we're more popular. You know, we use the Change the Future, the Assembl ethos of saying you've got some really valuable, good ideas. You know, you've somehow more or less governed with some success this city or this whole country, you know, with some success for hundreds of years. You know, we're not trying to just delete you and wipe you off the map. We're just saying now we've got a way of bringing better ideas to the table, and we want your input as well, and we want to kind of just cooperate as much as we can. And if you try and shut us down or shut the door on us, we're not going to go away. But so yeah, I think it needs to have an inbuilt system for, I think, really applying pressure if it comes to it. You know, applying pressure on these minority groups and shining a spotlight on the ones who are not listening, if that does happen, which hopefully it won't too much. But yeah, I went off on a bit of a tangent there that I hopes you kind of just understand a little bit more a user journey of Change the Future and the nuts and bolts of it and the interface of it a little bit.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, the user journey that you're describing is indeed fascinating and very seducing. I have a couple of questions around this journey. In our experience, the internet is actually pretty rigid, which means that if you design an interface with a set of functionalities, you're rapidly trapped into what the application can do and cannot do, and therefore it becomes extremely difficult to accompany along a complete journey the whole process, if only because the whole process is composed of different situations for the users, and therefore different functionalities, and sometimes it requires, you know, technical architectures that are not compatible, interfaces that are really complex to integrate together, and so on and so forth. And this is why I was saying that the web is very rigid in the sense that once you have identified a use case scenario, it's pretty difficult to add multiple use cases, you know, or it becomes overly complex, you know, in terms of you know, usability and so on and so forth. And if you look at what's existing out there on the web, usually what you have is examples of applications that have a very, very limited set of use cases. You mentioned Wikipedia, for instance. Wikipedia is actually extremely simple in terms of the kind of behaviors that you can have on the site, and I would even argue that it's almost the opposite of collective intelligence. It's almost it has become a war of editors and super users that have a very strong power over infrequent users. As a matter of fact, we talked, and that's just an anecdote, but we talked about with a community of open source developers. We talked about the possibility of hacking Wikipedia with Assembl, so that actually the work of defining or designing definitions could actually be a real collective intelligence effort. You might have an infinite array of definitions for the same word. You know, if I want to define, let's say, a very famous character, I might want to see him viewed by young people. I want to see him viewed by Corsicans. I want to see him viewed by Spaniards. I want to see him viewed by retired people. I mean, these are very different angles of views that you can't have on Wikipedia. So anyways, my point is that it's usually quite difficult to put flexibility in those applications that are usually well done to do one simple thing and pretty unflexible to do other things. That's maybe my first comment. Very rapidly, my second comment, and I'll let you react, Luke or Alex. My second comment is that in the user journey that you're describing, our own experience is that collective intelligence or crowdsourcing or having people interact collaboratively is very effective or very efficient, actually, before the step of decision making, which is why we sort of fine-tuned Assembl in order to be a process that helps facilitate future decision making, but not substitute decision making, the decision making process, if only because there's almost a principle of reality, which is that if you want to build a new roundabout, you will need a set of validations and decisions and ratifications that all are, in most cases outside of the scope and power of the communities that were involved, and we might regret it, but it's in most cases the way it's structured. Whereas we think that there's an incredible space for progress in the previous phases of actually reaching the point of having facilitated the decision-making process that will take place after, maybe in another environment. So there's a strict distinction between preparing the best decision possible and building something that will actually make people decide, using the system, which is, I think, more remote.
With Assembl, are you trying to address this challenge, which ChangeTheFuture certainly is trying to address, which is trying to reinvigorate an interest in the first place in the democratic cooperative process in people that maybe have become totally disenfranchised or politically disaffected. Maybe they don't feel like they've got anything to bring to the table, or they've just lost trust in any sort of process for kind of bringing people together to improve something. Because Change the Future is not just trying to create the nuts and bolts for the process for people who already know it's useful and they want to engage with it already. It doesn't just want to do that, but it also wants to do the behavior change element beforehand, which is saying, let's wake up, let's look at how beautiful this thing can be, let's look at why it's worthwhile even bothering to go on this website and use this app. And this is why democratic processes can be so powerful. And we know that apparently we live in a democracy, but yet you can't really put any ideas forward, and even the way that you're allowed to vote on things is not really managed in a proper way. It's not really one vote each, and we can't really talk about issues in a space. There's no conversational space to talk about them. Things like this, and the options are often much too few, and all these kinds of problems about democracy that have turned people off. So yeah, a lot of it is kind of actually trying to change people's, trying to literally make an entire paradigm shift for people. So they perceive political and civic engagement totally differently, and they see it as something more exciting and empowering rather than just boring or complicated. Is that something that Assembl is also trying to do, or is it just trying to be a useful service for people that already know they want to use it?
Well, I'll let Laura react as well. The way we designed Assembl is it was initially conceived in order to be used by everybody, and we tried to lower the entry barriers, the barriers of entry for any user, and we try to facilitate the onboarding of people within the debate. So that everybody can actually join a debate, even though most people don't have a culture of debating, and even less online, because they don't have the culture of being consulted. So I think one of the ambitions that we have, and that might sound over-ambitious, is we'd like to bring a step forward in how the web culture evolves towards more open consultation and open debates by designing, the types of journeys and the types of interfaces that facilitate for everybody that kind of experience. And this is why there was a lot of thinking and a lot of tests and a lot of pilots in trying to understand how we can detach ourselves from social media, from the usual behaviors that you are accustomed to when you use Facebook, or when you use even your emails. So we did a lot of work in that area. We did a lot of work to maximize the experience of collective intelligence, and we did a lot of work to make it easy for everybody to contribute. I don't know if it answers your question. It's also a work in progress, and there's a lot of there's a lot of tests going on. We are simplifying the process as much as possible. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, I don't know if this is kind of along the same line, but definitely designed in mind to allow people that don't necessarily know that they want to use it to be able to use it, or to make it interesting enough for people that can like maybe if I'm a busy mom and I have 3 kids and I hear that my town is doing this open conversation around kind of how can I make my city more accessible, and this mom definitely has ideas. She has ideas for her kids, but doesn't really have time to contribute. So we want to make it as easy as possible for her to find the ideas that she wants to contribute to, jump in, share her thoughts, react to people. But it also really depends on how Assembl is being used, because we're really targeting like a million different markets. But for a project like a community-based or democracy-based kind of thing, then yeah, it's definitely something that we've considered in the design. If that makes sense.
That's okay. I am somewhat interested in user journeys and the interface, but to me that's somewhat secondary compared to the actual data structures and what information in the underlying system is being passed around and how. I say somewhat secondary because it's still very important. But a big problem I sort of see emerging with all the different democratic systems is exactly that. They're all different democratic systems with large amounts of overlap that currently have no way of sharing data. And quite a few systems are completely closed source and proprietary, some are completely open source, but they're still not really talking to each other. There are even some various distributed systems which talk to each other inside itself, but there's nothing along the levels of email, for example, where anyone can set up their own email server, or they can connect to someone else's web-based server or connect to their ISP server. There's any number of ways you can get into the system and still share data with everyone on the same kind of, but different systems. And I was wondering if you guys had any particular thoughts or developments in that kind of area.
Just to paraphrase your question to make sure we understand it. So you're asking if there's anything in place for information to be shared across debates that are being held by different organizations or different governments?
Well, not exactly that. I'd say more data with groups that aren't being hosted by your servers and your software. So, for example, if it turns out there's a problem with your company or your server goes down, then the system would still happily run along fine. Also, it would potentially mean that because the data is being open and shared and not relying on one central source, it's much easier for people to check and validate and make sure no one's manipulating votes and everything is actually happening as it's purported to be happening. I mean, yes, one of my fears in democracy, which has been repeatedly shown to be correct, is many governments falsify their votes even for the representatives getting into their parliament, and from that point on the democracy in that country is already a joke because it's not even close to a democracy.
To be honest, this is pretty far from the risks and worries that we have, if only because what we focus on is qualitative debates, around societal issues. We don't capture sensitive data. We don't necessarily, host any information about the profile of the participants and so on and so forth. It's almost an issue that it might be relevant along the way if the whole thing is extremely successful and used in many different contexts. But so far, I'll give you an example, a concrete example of a debate that we hosted around currency, social alternative currencies, and that debate gathered about 350 people that were discussing, the benefits and concerns about alternative currencies and trying to define this, the stepping stone of new parallel currencies or alternative currencies that could be developed and so on and so forth. There was no real issue about confidential information or anything of this caliber.
At the same time, in that context, like if the server did go down for half an hour, it's not the end of the world, because it's not like a time-sensitive debate. It's not a critical issue. Not to say that we want our servers to go down or don't want to have a backup plan, but it's kind of not the critical issue that we're thinking about at the moment.
I haven't explained my priorities properly, it seems. More my major concerns would be, for example, if someone in your team was paid off by a government to manipulate the actual voting system, and thus the vote results show something different to how people actually voted. Or, for example, if your server didn't go down for half an hour but your company went out of business, and thus everyone's data was lost into the abyss forever. More things along those lines.
Well, maybe one simple comment would be that we're not the right people to talk to.
Yeah.
You should talk to our technology guys, especially the lead developer that deals with the data model and the architecture and the back end and the related the links with the servers and so on and so forth. So a clear good answer would be that you're not talking to the right persons, and even shorter response is I don't know. We never thought about it really. We never had the problem. But to be honest, before we have that kind of problem, there's a lot of things that need to be done and needs to be tested and fine-tuned and everything. An example would be, how do we make sure that the harvesters, in our case, are trained enough in order to be how should I say?
Effective.
Sorry.
Effective.
Effective in in structuring information, in building the building blocks of the table of ideas, because in a way it is a skill. We are trying to go in the direction of crowdsourcing harvesting in order to have multiple harvesters that do the work, and that raises a lot of questions about how do you manage conflicting visions about how to synthesize contributions and so on and so forth.
Or even just different people's biases about what they would consider to be an idea versus what someone else would be considered to be an idea. Just many issues along those lines that we need to deal with as well.
Is that okay to jump in with a couple of questions, just because I'm conscious I've got to leave pretty shortly. If you guys have any more time and want to carry on chatting, that's obviously great. I've got to run away pretty soon though. And I just noted in the chat window a couple of questions. I just wondered, firstly, can we use Assembl right now? And can ChangeTheFuture help Assembl right now? Are you guys still there?
Yeah, sorry.
And I was also interested in just a very short summary of your next couple of milestones, if you know them and fancy sharing them. For ChangeTheFuture, you can't use ChangeTheFuture now because it doesn't exist, but certainly we have some blueprints that we can share with you, and I can email those over or whatever. And we're always trying to improve how the existing resources that we have are laid out, and everything is open and transparent. The kind of four values and practices of ChangeTheFuture are openness and transparency, so interactive and everything shared. We don't keep anything private apart from some passwords and things until you probe into the community that you want to get involved, and cooperation and democracy, which I think is fairly obvious. So next big couple of milestones for us, if you're interested, are very briefly, basically, from my point of view at least, to make a simplified version of Change the Future, but with as many of the key features as possible out of paper. Make it out of paper, a prototype. And in the middle of Brighton, run an all-day event where we have a huge wall, like a mobile wall made of cardboard or wood, onto which we invite everybody who's passing by, and we'll try and invite lots of people as well in advance to all come together and basically use Change the Future. They're restricted to only using a Brighton group, so they can't put ideas for improving their schools or organisations or the country. It has to be about Brighton, and we really want to try and reach out to Brighton and Hove Council to get involved in this. But so mostly this has been something ticking over in my head, and I want to develop ideas with the rest of, like, Alex and the rest of the Change the Future team, because I've been doing a summer job, and yeah, all of us are kind of doing other things at the same time, so we need to kind of check in periodically and sort of move forward together. By the way, guys, we've been using a website called Trello. I'll type it. I don't know if you know of it, but one of the questions I've been wondering is whether Assembl might be better for us to use than Trello. Trello is an incredible, rich, but simple task management suite, which we found really useful for managing all kinds of resources and roadmaps and cooperative sort of horizontal governance, task management, and you know, you can add attachments and view dates and images. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. But yeah, so I want to do this in maybe a couple of months, have this thing out there all day, and maybe it will stay there for longer. Maybe we'll have it for weeks, or you know, foreseeably. But hopefully that will prove the Change the Future process, and hopefully it will get into the media, like the local newspapers and things, with some luck, and people will blog about it a bit, and we can get a little bit of buzz going, and hopefully strengthen our workforce a little bit, things like this. And I think I would propose that off the back of that we try and get maybe 20 or 30,000 pounds, because we've only had a few grand so far for Change the Future. And with that money we run an experiment where we put a bounty on every task, and these tasks, which at the moment I'm imagining we manage through Trello, so we might put £10 on this task, which might be literally go and get a dustbin for the office, or £200 on this task, which might be create a flyer for the next event that we're hosting. Do you know what I mean? There's like 1,000 tasks, I'm sure, for Assembl and Change the Future. So many different things. Like, it's incredible. People will come along to the project and be like, I can't program anything. I'm sure I can't be useful. And I'm like, you can. Everyone can be useful. You can play music. You know, like we had an event for kind of introducing the project and brainstorming ideas for Change the Future. And my housemate is an amazing musician. And his music at the beginning of the event just really set the mood and was just so incredible. And my other friend cooks amazing food, and that's brilliant for events where we're coming together and spending a long, hard day sharing ideas and problem solving. And it's beautiful to have really healthy, delicious food. So many ways people can obviously help. So yeah, I want to run this experiment of putting bounties on all the tasks, so anyone in the world can join the Change the Future workforce and start earning money doing these tasks. Although you know, this is kind of a temporary thing, because really I feel like a lot of the problems that I personally want to solve with Change the Future are problems that are caused by our current relationship with money. So it's a bit of a contentious issue for me, but I feel like the benefit in the short term outweighs you know, the problems. I think it would really help to get the project off the ground and just be a really interesting experiment to do in the short term. So yeah, that's kind of some of the upcoming Change the Future milestones.
Well, thanks, Luke, for this description of the milestones and your adventure. I mean, it's very interesting to see, you know, how there could be synergies between what we do and what you do. I'm not sure that we would be a good substitute to Trello.
Yeah.
Because as a, you know, I was alluding to the fact that applications on the web are actually very rigid. We don't have any task management functionality on Assembl, and there's a lot of project management applications. And
yeah, it's really for kind of discussing ideas and co-building on each other's ideas. But I think as a task manager, like with a calendar and assigning things like that, it's really a different kind of
use
kettle
case.
of fish. Yeah.
Do you know how you guys compare to Lumio or OpenIDEO?
Yes. Lumio and IDEO.
Oh yeah.
I have looked at so many different platforms. I'm trying to remember the specifics of Lumio and IDEO, but memory serves. The main difference for us and those platforms is really the focusing on getting people to react to each other's ideas and build ideas together rather than just sharing ideas and then having kind of a voting system or say like, yeah, that's cool or no, that's not cool. We want to really go beyond that and get people to really build on each other's kind of dig in deeper.
OpenIDEO is a terrific, is a fantastic platform. I think it's very well done, very well designed. But then again, it works as a competition. It's a call for great solutions to an issue, and it is true that people can actually fine-tune their proposals by, reacting to the comments that have been expressed by the community. But it's a very sort of basic type of interaction between the person that proposes the solution and the community that sort of reacts and comments and assesses the solution. And then again, there's at the end of the process there is a voting mechanism, which is quite complex in the case of OpenIDEO because there's a number of different steps. As we said, we try to be slightly different by maximizing interactions between ideas and sub-ideas and between participants. As opposed to focusing on one project and having people just commenting and voting. That's one way to look at it. Now, to try to answer your questions, Luke, can you use Assembl now? Not yet. It will be usable mid-September, between mid-September and end of September. We're currently working on a highly functional MVP that will be released.
2 weeks.
Hopefully. Exactly, two to 4 weeks, let's say, and then it will be possible to test it. Even though, as we said, it requires the intermediation of harvesters. So there might be some support required for people to understand what is the role of the harvesters. So, anyways, mid-September is probably the thing to remember. A couple of milestones that we have in mind after that is one is related to the integration of visualizations of the debate, because we think that it's usually extremely difficult to understand in a nutshell where the discussion goes and how it's structured, and to make sense out of all these conversations, really. And we want to go further than simple mind maps. That's actually why we work with the Open University, to design those visualizations together. That's one milestone. Another milestone is what we call the creativity widgets. We haven't talked about it with you guys, but it's essentially the use of videos from YouTube or creativity cards that are proposed to the participants to stir up creativity, because our return of experience on online debates that it's sometimes difficult to avoid groupthink. It's sometimes difficult to go, really in innovative avenues and to go off the beaten track and so on and so forth. And sometimes you need some stimulation for the community to go in another direction in order to to investigate interesting avenues. So we designed two modules. One is based on videos, one is based on creativity cards, so that people can actually maximize their creativity and avoid groupthink. So anyways, that's another milestone that we have in mind. Yeah, and maybe to conclude, Luke and Alex, the link that could be done with ChangeTheFuture, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's we're really looking for engaged communities that want to use the tool and the system in order to find solutions to an issue that is important for them. We are working with Ashoka, we're working with different communities, but we're always on the looking for additional communities that could use the tool. It's open source, it's free of use, blah blah blah. So if, and should I say, when you reach the point of having I don't know, an early adopter community, or maybe a starting community of people that want to engage into ChangeTheFuture, it would be great for us if you could use the tool and see if it corresponds to the user journey that you described.
Brilliant, yeah. That's awesome. You can probably see it's getting quite dark where I am. My eyes look like big blue discs. That's quite strange. Anyway, yeah, thanks for that. I've realised that we haven't talked at all about a revenue model for Assembl. I'm curious how you guys are funding stuff and how you look to be funding stuff in the future. But yeah, maybe just if there's any chance you can sum that up into sort of a few seconds. I don't know if that's possible. I should have left before, and it's my housemate's birthday.
Quickly interject to say I've got to run as well, and it's been lovely meeting both of you, and good to see you again, Luke. And I'll hopefully see you sometime soon.
Cool.
Thank you, Alex. Bye.
Nice one, mate. Bye.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, Luke, we work on a pre-licensed model, which means that the software is free for open groups that accept to be completely open and that accept that the results of the debate be shareable under Creative Commons. If it is not the case, the group is considered private, and we don't sell the license because we can't sell a license that has been of a technology that has been designed open source, but we sell the consulting services that correspond to the role of the harvesters. So let's say that let's say that a private school wants to. I'm not building up this example. It's actually an existing example.
Similar to OpenIDO, though, basically.
Sorry.
Similar to OpenIDO, though, basically. Where OpenIDO get paid for collecting the ideas and bringing it into place. They get paid for that work.
Yeah.
If for instance a private school wants to co-design its strategic plan with all the teachers and the professors and students and so on and so forth and alumni, it's a private group because not everybody is invited, and of course I would assume that the strategic plan is not shareable in the end. So in that case, we would sell the service of accompanying the school in co-designing its deliverable by using Assembl.
Sure. Awesome. Thanks for that. That's fantastic. Cool. I just want to say thank you so much for spending a huge amount of your very valuable time talking to me and Alex, and also for agreeing for this to be public to anyone else who wanted to view it. I don't know if there were people who watched it live, but it'll also be recorded too. So hopefully more people can learn about what we're doing and get involved in our projects, and it can create new ideas. So yeah, thank you so much. And let me know if there's anything else that you think I or ChangeTheFuture can help with, or if you want to bounce any ideas. I, for one, am totally happy to be a sounding board for ideas anytime. I think what you guys are doing is beautiful and really exciting. So if I can be a resource for you, then yeah, tap me.
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, on our side, it's always very interesting to bounce ideas like this. On your side, if you when you have the feeling that you might need that kind of tool, just tell us, and we'd be delighted to navigate you into the system.
Yeah, definitely we'll be using it in mid-September as soon as it's out, I'm sure. Yeah.
Thanks so much, and have a great evening on this Friday.
Cool. All right, Laura and Frank, thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.